Hey guys, Linda Vodder here. Welcome back to Boxwood Week. So I promised you a demonstration on how I prune the potager or the boxwood hedge in my potager, and I want to demonstrate to you exactly how I get this rounded form. And you can see here pretty clearly, Paige can show you the area, the inside area that I have already pruned versus the outside area, which is still fluffy and overgrown, and I'm getting ready to prune it. Now before I start pruning at all, I do put down a sheet or a tarp or something to capture the clippings. And I do that for a couple of reasons. Primarily because it makes cleanup so much easier. The other reason is I don't want to leave any of those clippings on the ground, just in case some of them are diseased or they have some kind of insect issue. I don't want to leave them in the garden bed so they can spread their spores or their disease to other areas. So that also is another reason to make sure that you're very careful and you practice good boxwood hygiene. The next thing is make sure that your long-bladed pruners are really sharp. Now I'll put this again on stories as a swipe up link, but I have finally found some pruners that I think are exceptional. These are Barnell pruners. They're aluminum, they're very lightweight, they're very sharp, and I especially like the really pointed tip, which can help you do very exacting pruning. So they come with a sheath, and I'm going to really try to be good and responsible about these pruners and take good care of them. So now we're basically ready to prune. I've moved the sheet to the outside area, and you can start in a number of different ways, but basically this is how I do it. I'm first of all going to try to define what is the curvature of the top edge. And so I come through and I'm just clipping pretty much on a 45-degree angle. And you can see how all of those clippings are just going straight onto the sheet. And then I'm going to kind of move down a little bit. You want to make sure that, see that one there that's kind of sticking out, how fleshy and green it is? You want to make sure that if some of those are even in profile, that I'm still clipping those off, because if not, those are going to grow back almost immediately and ruin the clean profile of the hedge itself. So I'm going to continue until I get this whole section done. And you can kind of see this is how I've established that rounded form. I've done this on a 45-degree angle, and I'm just moving downward vertically just a little bit. It's around the edges where you'll find that the point on these pruners is really valuable, because you can get down into areas like right here where the hedge abuts up against the boxwood sphere, and you can do more exacting pruning. Once I get to this stage, I am going to get the top, and I'm going to very, very slightly angle my pruners, not so much for the architecture of the form, but because I want all of these clippings to fall to the outside onto my tarp and not to the inside into the area that I've already clipped. So you can see how I'm pruning and kind of tossing a little bit in that direction. Now, if you like a really formal aspect to your garden, you could do this in square, and that's a very traditional way to do it. Some research has shown, and I'll talk more about boxwood blight a little bit later, some research has shown, go figure, that when you prune them in this rounded way with a rounded top, it makes them less susceptible to boxwood blight. I have no idea about the science behind it, but I have read some anecdotal information on that, which I will share later. And also I will share lots of tips from a guy named James Todman, who I think of as the boxwood whisperer, because he knows absolutely everything there is to know about shearing boxwood, shaping boxwood, caring for boxwood, rejuvenating boxwood, basically all things boxwood. So now to get the exterior of this hedge, I can do it a couple of different ways. I can hold my pruners horizontally like this, or vertically like this. And basically, you can see I'm not being very exacting. I am just pruning against the existing profile. I want to make sure I don't prune my speaker wire there. Okay. And I do try to tidy up the bottom. Sometimes you'll find, especially with boxwood spheres, that really exacting pruning around the base is what gives it, I think, its really strong spherical form. And I want it to look tidy from top to bottom. I try, not always with success, but to make the bottom just slightly wider than the top, so the top would be just a bit narrower. That accentuates this rounded form, but it also makes the lower sections of the hedge grow out a bit so that they too get a lot of sun, or as much sun as possible. Now, I said earlier, this is wintergreen boxwood. It is very tough. It is fast growing. I have found that it can recover pretty nicely from a harsh winter, but more importantly from a harsh summer. It can self-correct. If sections of it die out, it will grow back with a little bit of fertilizing. But I don't fertilize a lot because, as I said, this is a rapidly growing variety, and I don't want to do any more pruning than I absolutely have to. I'm about finished with this section, so you can see it didn't take too much time, but later this week I am going to finish pruning. And typically what I do, guys, is so that it's easier on my back, I remember to stand up and stretch periodically. I typically do just one quadrant at a time. I could prune it all in one day, but I break it up a little bit to save my back and just to get some other things done in the garden. But I do it one quadrant at a time. The other tip that I would tell you is that basically you want to make sure that you do it at approximately the same time, because the growth rate, it grows so fast that I want it to be completely pristine and pruned all at one time. Now later, as I do the other sections of the hedge, I'm actually going to time myself, because one of the questions I am frequently asked is, how long does it take you to do all of that pruning? So I'm going to be very mathematical and very statistical about it, and I am going to time myself. The next time I do one of these quadrants, I will include all sections of the quadrant, this area right here, and that area that frames the circle in the middle. If you look at it, and if you look back in my feed, you can see that basically these are two stylized hearts that face one another with a circle in the middle. And it has grown quite a bit over time. Another question that I get very, very frequently is, how long has it been here? And I wish I could tell you with some exactitude how long it had been here, but I'm going to say probably about at least 20 years, perhaps longer. I planted 1-gallon plants about every 15 inches, and immediately you could see what the form was. If you go back again in my feed, you can even see a drone video to look at it from overhead. But recently, in the past 2 years, because we've had pretty good rain, it has really increased in size, in girth, and in height, and increasingly I notice over time it's really reducing the interior space. So I'm going to have to be watchful about it. It might be later that it almost completely encloses the interior space, and then I might just put some pots in there and grow my veggies in pots. But it's beautiful nevertheless. Yes, it is kind of high maintenance, but I think it's worth it. And I think it's really beautiful. This glossy green, when it catches the light, is really wonderful. Make sure that you move your turp along with you as you move down the hedge. So there you have it, how I prune the boxwood. Make sure you guys to go to my YouTube channel and go to the link in my profile and sign up for my newsletter, because I'm going to be putting a lot more specific information there on what boxwood varieties I like and what purposes I use each of the varieties for. But there is a demonstration on how I prune the boxwood hedge in my potager.